Hey, this is Jamie from Stonemaier Games, and today I'm going to share my top 10 favorite games of all time as of February 2021. Now, I do this list twice a year, and every time I use slightly different requirements for this list. The last time I made it, it was games that I've played in the last 6 months. I didn't, no other games were eligible. In the past, I've used other methods. This year, I did something a little different. I went back and looked at all of my top 10 lists on my channel, a lot of which are based on a specific mechanism in a game, like top 10 worker placement games. And I looked at the number 1 and number 2 games on all those lists, and I compiled a giant spreadsheet with all these games, and then I searched for any games that appeared at least 3 times as the number 1 or number 2 game on any top 10 list. So obviously this is skewed a little bit towards games that have come out a little bit longer ago. But that's, I don't know, this is completely arbitrary anyway, so that's the requirement that I use for this list. The games have to have appeared at least 3 times as number 1 or number 2 on my top 10 list. And then I took those games and I just ranked them based on my favorites as I see it right now. My honorable mentions based on this category, games that were eligible based on what I just explained, but I didn't quite put into the top 10, were A Feast for Odin, On Tour, Patchwork, Azul Summer Pavilion, Hanamikoji, Magic, and Ra. I also queried my Stonemaier Ambassadors to ask them what their number 1 game of all time is as of right now. And they answered in alphabetical order, Arkham Horror LCG. And these were repeat answers. There were a lot of answers. These are the ones that I saw also around at least 3 times. Arkham Horror LCG, Everdell, Gloomhaven, Great Western Trail, Near and Far, The Quacks of Quedlinburg, Root, Scythe, Spirit Island, Tapestry, Terraforming Mars, Twilight Imperium, Viticulture, and Wingspan. And it was somewhat flattering to see that Scythe appeared on that list by far more than any other game. I think that's probably related to this list being heavily skewed to people who are fans of Stonemaier games, as they are Stonemaier Ambassadors. So yeah, let me jump into my top 10 list right now. My number 10, let's start with number 10 favorite game is Just One. Just One, I absolutely love this game. This is a cooperative social game where one player has a word that they are trying to guess, a single word they're trying to guess, and all other players are allowed to give that player a one-word clue simultaneously. But if any of those other players repeat the same one-word clue, the person trying to guess the word doesn't get to see that clue. So if the word is pizza and 2 people write down pepperoni, before I get to open my eyes and see the clues, those 2 clues are placed face down. I don't know, for so many reasons I love this game. It's very easy to get to the table. You can play it for 5 minutes or you can play it for an hour if you want. You get to feel really clever in this game in both roles, as the person who is guessing and the person who is giving clues. And you have these moments where you just feel in sync with other people, where you give just the right clues without overlapping, or you have comical moments where you have a ton of overlap because you all thought you were being a little bit too clever. And so I have fun every time I play Just One with any type of gamer. Gamers who love heavy games, gamers that love light games, even though it's a super light, easy game to teach. And that is Just One, my number 10 favorite game right now. My number 9 favorite game is one that I don't own, but I have played quite a bit on Board Game Arena and have played quite a bit in person. That is Terra Mystica. This is probably the heaviest game on this list. Terra Mystica is kind of an epic, heavy, medium-heavy Euro game. And the biggest thing I love about the game is the asymmetry. I don't always love games that have very strong asymmetry, because sometimes I like to solve the puzzle being on even ground, level ground with all other players. But Terra Mystica is not that type of game. Terra Mystica is a game where you have a very different asymmetric player mat that leads to very different paths than the other players. And I love playing the different factions in this game. I usually play randomly. I get a random faction. Maybe I choose one side of that player mat, and I just have a blast playing with those different factions and trying to maximize them and trying to solve the puzzle of each individual faction in Terra Mystica. There are a lot of little mechanisms that I also love about the game, just the sense of progression, how you're pulling pieces off your player mat and improving your income throughout the game, getting more and more stuff. But a big part of it just comes down to the asymmetry. I really love that aspect of the game. So Terra Mystica is my number 9 favorite game right now. At number 8 is a new addition to the list, and that is Shards of Infinity. Shards of Infinity is a deck building game with a very, very clever hook. And really 2 clever hooks. One is it has a wonderful cooperative mini campaign expansion. This is a competitive game, but it seamlessly blends into a cooperative game when you add this Shadow of Salvation expansion. But the game itself, the cooperative game, is a wonderful game. Whether you play it out of the box here or if you play it digitally, there's a wonderful digital implementation. And the hook that I really love about this game is mastery. In Shards of Infinity, there are a number of cards that give you stronger benefits if you have reached a certain level of mastery, up to 30. So mastery is pretty big. You can have quite a bit of mastery in this game. It feels so good to level up and get these cards better and better. So one card in your hand might start off fairly weak as you're playing. It's a deck building game, so it's cycling through your deck. It's weak, and suddenly you reach a certain level of mastery, and it's awesome, and it's super strong. Or really, most cards in Shards of Infinity are pretty good, and then they get even better due to mastery. And tied to that is the choice in Shards of Infinity that whenever you take a turn, there's a resource that you can spend, this crystal resource that you can spend to buy cards in the card row. But you can always, once per turn, spend one crystal to level up your mastery one level. And this just tiny little tweak, I've talked about it before, but I have to mention it because it's so clever. Because in most deck building games, you are inclined to buy the most expensive card in the card row. Generally, it is a better card because that's how cards in deck building games are balanced. They cost more, they're better cards. There are some situational other decisions to make in Shards of Infinity if you're comboing different factions, things like that. But that is generally the idea. But in Shards of Infinity, because every turn you have that choice to spend a crystal to level up your mastery, suddenly that really deepens the decision as to which cards you buy. So if you have 4 crystals to spend, and there are 2 cards that cost 4 on the table and another one that costs 3, normally you'd probably just be looking at those cards that cost 4. But because of this extra element of mastering, of leveling up, you are probably looking at the 4 cards and the 3 cost card. So it's broadening your range of decisions while still not making it overwhelming. I could go on about this game. It is a wonderful game. Just talking about it makes me excited. Shards of Infinity, my number 8 favorite game right now. At number 7 on the list is Time Stories, a game that I don't own because I've given away my copies. Time Stories is a scenario-based game that after you play, it is very easy for you to share it with other people. I loved the original series of Time Stories, which had a core box and then a number of modules that you added in. And I also, probably even more so, love the standalone boxes of Time Stories Revolution, where you just buy a single standalone box for like $20, $25, and you play through it for 3 or 4 hours, and then you're done. It's a little bit like an escape room in a box, but a lot bigger. Like these are big worlds that you're exploring, and you're doing so in first person. I love this about the game, that you are looking at a panorama of cards from a first-person view. It feels like you are walking through a world, walking through a movie, really, and making decisions throughout that movie, cooperating with other players. And at certain points, you will pick up those cards, and you alone will look at that card and learn from it and see what's on it. You actually use your eyes often to solve puzzles, to look for clues, and to read text and figure out what that means. And then you'll put the card back down, and you'll talk about it with the other players and decide what to do next. It continues to be one of the most epic gaming experiences that I've ever played, even with these standalone Time Stories Revolution modules, which I've really been enjoying, at a variety of player counts. 2 players, I've played them at 6 players, even though the player count is technically 4 players. Time Stories, wonderful, wonderful game. It's my number 7 on this list. At number 6 is a game that inspired our new release, Red Rising, a much smaller box, a much shorter game, Fantasy Realms. This is a wonderful hand management combo building game. And really the combos are the heart of this game. You are basically throughout the game, on your turn, you are getting rid of a card and you are adding a card to your hand. And the card that you're adding to your hand contributes to the combos that you're building for endgame scoring. Because at the end of the game, you are going to score your hand of cards. So you'll start off with this random hand of cards that may or may not work together all that well. And over the course of the game, you're crafting that hand. You're building those combos. And you're minimizing the penalties, because some cards do have penalties in Fantasy Realms. It's only 53 cards. I'm just astonished whenever I see that, because there's so many decisions to make within those 53 cards. And every game feels different because of the cards that you start out with, the cards that you see throughout the game. This is a must-have filler game, I think, in any collection. And if you like this, I think you'll also like Red Rising. If you like Red Rising, I highly recommend Fantasy Realms. I think both belong in your collection. That's my number 6 favorite game right now. My number 5 favorite game is the Quacks of Quedlinburg. This is a weird game because it can be completely frustrating. It is a push your luck game where you can fail over and over again as you push your luck. But the game has a few little hooks that mitigate that. One is the catch-up mechanism. There's this wonderful catch-up mechanism where you, even if you fall really behind early in the game, you can catch up and be competitive in the game. Another is that you always feel like you have a chance at something awesome as you're pulling these tokens from the game and trying not to, from your bag, and trying not to bust. There's a wonderful sense of progression in the game because they're constantly adding more and better stuff to your bag and improving your bag. And also, even if you do bust, you still have a choice as to whether or not you're going to gain points or if you're going to gain the resources so you can buy more stuff and add to your bag. So I love that even though you've busted, you're still getting something that's important to you, the thing that you're valuing the most at that point in the game. Later in the game, it's probably points. Early in the game, it's probably resources so you can add more tokens to the bag. Quacks is a weird one. It is not a game that I love at all times, but I am always excited to play it. It is odd in that way. Because of that push your luck, I really, really love that push your luck and the bag building element to it. That's Quacks of Quedlinburg, my number 5 favorite game of all time as of right now. My number 4 favorite game is a game that I actually have not played in a while, but it has appeared on so many of my lists, and when I think about it, I just get excited about it, and that is The Castles of Mad King Ludwig. This is a game that actually inspired a Stonemaier game and inspired us to create a license with Bezier Games called Between Two Castles of Mad King Ludwig. In Castles, there's a few elements of it that I really, really love. One is that it is very much so a rewarding game. When you gain, you're building your own castle, and when you gain a tile to add to your castle, you're almost always getting one immediate benefit. And you're also, if you're completing that room, you're getting other benefits as well because you're getting a room completion bonus. So it just feels good. Every turn feels really, really good. I also love I price you choose or I cut you choose. In this game, every player takes turns being the master builder where they set the prices of the different tiles that are available for that round. And the other players are buying those tiles from that player. So it's this internal economy with an I price you choose system where you get to feel clever and you're really paying attention to what other opponents need and what you need so that you can price opponents out of the thing you need, but also price the things they need just high enough that they're willing to pay for it and give you a lot of money. I love that element of the game. Those two things combined. Oh, and also it's super easy to teach and learn. It is not a complicated game, but there's so much depth to it and so much replayability. It is just a wonderful game. I have backed the collector's edition or the new deluxe edition on Kickstarter, and I am super excited to get and play that version of the game. So that's number 4 on my list, The Castles of Mad King Ludwig. And number 3 is a game that I own on Steam, but not in person, not on the tabletop, and that is Lords of Waterdeep. It amazes me how good this game is on so many different levels. It is, at its core, a very simple worker placement game, but there are so many interesting decisions to make throughout the game as the board grows, because it has this idea where the actions that you have access to are growing as different players build new structures, new buildings, new actions around the board. So you have access to these more and more actions throughout the game, and every decision is difficult. I also love the quest system, how when you complete a quest, you're not just usually getting points, but you're usually getting a benefit that might lead into the next quest that you want to complete. So you're constantly feeling like you're progressing even as you're spending resources to complete quests. And there are also just so many little cards that I love. There is a little bit of negative player interaction in the game, and if I'm playing the game in person, sometimes I'm inclined to take out those cards. But there are also a lot of positive player interaction cards, where you play a card, you get something really, really good. An intrigue card, you play an intrigue card, you get something really good, but your opponents also get something. I love that. And also the expansion to Lords of Waterdeep. I didn't think about expansions too much with these games, but Lords of Waterdeep has one of the best expansions ever, and that is it adds an element of corruption. And corruption is just a fantastic mechanism where you can take these powerful actions that give you awesome benefits, but you also get corruption, which may not hurt all that much unless a lot of players, including yourself, have taken corruption throughout the game. And suddenly then at the end of the game, those corruption tokens are worth a heavy amount of negative points. There's even more I can talk about. I can talk about the lords themselves. There's more to this game, but I just love Lords of Waterdeep. I get excited to play it every time I play it, and even talking about it again, I want to play it on Steam right now because I enjoy this game so much. That's Lords of Waterdeep, my number 3 favorite game. My number 2 favorite game is a game that I've invested so much time into, and that is Clank. I have everything in my giant Clank Legacy box. I say invested time because this is a game that I not only played through the entire Legacy game and loved it, but I also have played through many of the expansions, just the core game by itself. And I continue to love it. I absolutely continue to love Clank. Clank is a deck building game with a board where you are venturing down into a dungeon to pick up treasures, to pick up loot, to buy equipment that helps you, and then be able to race back out of the dungeon. So there's this race in, race out element that I love. I love the different paths that you're taking as you venture down into the dungeon. The deck building is fun. The deck building is a lot of fun, really. There's a lot of really clever mechanisms in the deck building. And each expansion feels like it adds something really gratifying and new to Clank. And the Legacy experience by itself is fantastic, too. I'm including Clank Legacy and all Clank stuff in this category of Clank at number 2 on this list. Really, as I look at this list, any of these top games, any of these games could be number 1 at any given time, because I love these games so much. But that is Clank at number 2 on my list. And then at number 1, I have Seven Wonders Duel. Kind of a smaller game on this list. It only plays 2 players, but that's been a lot of my gaming, in person at least, over the last year. And there's just so much that I love about Seven Wonders Duel. I love I Cut, You Choose. And while you're not exactly cutting in this game, in Seven Wonders Duel, you have this pyramid of cards. And whenever you take a card, you are making the cards that it was overlapping with accessible to your opponent. And so you're constantly faced with this decision of which card am I going to take because it benefits me, and which card do I maybe want to avoid because that will give my opponent a card that they really, really need. Or am I going to reveal some unknown cards? They're face down cards, so you don't even know what you're revealing. It could be something good for you, it could be something good for them. I love that. It also has tug of war. It has a tug of war element where you are on the military track in the game, where you are kind of fighting over your military position, moving this token back and forth. I love tug of war. It also has instant win conditions, something that I found that I love in the right game. It doesn't always work, but in Seven Wonders Duel, you can play out the entire game, play three rounds, count your points, that determines the winner. Or you can win based immediately on a science victory or a military victory, which are really, really cleverly implemented. It's also an engine building game. You're constantly getting better and more stuff throughout the game. There's so much in this game that I love, and I get excited to play it on the tabletop. I get excited to play it on Board Game Arena. I love Seven Wonders Duel. Fantastic game. This game might move down on the list after we get back to more in-person gaming and bigger groups in the future when that's safe to do so. But right now, I have to put it at the top of my list. It is my favorite 2-player game and my favorite number 1 game of all time as of right now. Seven Wonders Duel. So yeah, that is my list right now. I would love to hear yours based on any classification that you want. You can just go off the top of your head and name your favorite game, your top 3 games, your top 5 games, or use the Pub Meeple sorting system, or do what I did here and look at previous top 10 lists that you've made and pick out some of the top games on that list and put them consolidated into one top 10 list. However you want to do it, I would love to hear your favorite games in the comments below. Thanks.